Hello and welcome to another episode of the Student Loan Planner Podcast. Today we're going to take listener questions. It's going to be a lot of questions today. I'm sure some of these questions are going to be on your mind, even ones that you didn't even realize you wanted to ask. So let's dive into our first listener question.
Hi, Travis. Thanks for your podcast. It's actually very helpful. I went to school from 2003 to 2006, so my loans are all before 2007. I've been on IDR since then, and it's hard to tell from notes, but at some point I switched to pay and then repay. And because of the Biden administration, it was switched automatically to save. Well, now I don't know what to do or what to expect, because if they get rid of save, pay, and repay, is my only option IBR? And will it switch back to 25 years of repayment instead of 20? Right now, my RDR count, I'm only 2 years away. And if everything goes away, I will be 7 years away, and my monthly payment most likely will quadruple. I also recently lost my job, so my income is lower, but I was just wondering if you had any advice. Thank you.
Okay, so for this borrower, I would go to studentaid.gov/IDR and I would apply for probably pay for now. The thing is this person mentioned being on pay at some point, so they should be able to get back onto it, hopefully. And if they're able to get back onto it, then they would be done pretty quickly. So that's not a bad idea if you only have 2 years left to try to roll the dice and see if you could get it. If somebody is losing pay, though, because of court actions, like what would they do? So this person, I would think, would need to be real careful about their AGI, their filing status, their income, their 401k contributions, and they'd need to try to get on to IBR, and they would have to see, is there a projected balance left to be forgiven or not? If there is, then this person would be in great shape. But if there is not a projected balance left to be forgiven, then you would have to make a choice. Do you want to pay the government extra interest, or you just want to try to get rid of it and pay it off and potentially have no choice but to refinance it? Now, if you're 7 years away, I would be a little cautious because, Trump administration will last for another little over 3.5 more years. And who knows who the next president is. So I would be cautious, would be my suggestion to this borrower. But let's not worry about things getting repealed before they actually do. So that would be my thoughts on that one. Now let's take another.
Hi, Travis. My name is Sarah. I just wanted to start off by saying I've been an avid listener for the past few months, especially, and I really appreciate all the information you provided. My main concern I had about my student loans was about my interest accrual. I was on the SAVE forbearance and I applied to switch to pay mid-December when the application opened. I had contacted my servicer, Nelnet, since then, who told me that they were almost done processing, but now with the current Department of Ed shutdown, I am not sure where I stand, being in this kind of limbo. I was under the impression that there was not supposed to be any interest accrual during the SAVE forbearance and during the forbearance period put on the account when switching to a different IDR plan, which was what I had done in mid-December until now. However, I noticed that when I checked my most recent statement from June 2024 before the SAVE forbearance with my, compared to my NSLDS file from November 2024, and then also my most recent download of the NSLDS file from last month, my interest accrual has grown. Is this a mistake? And if so, should I be taking necessary steps to get this corrected? Thank you so much.
So I promise that not every single answer I give is going to be it depends. But for this borrower, I would think you applied to switch plans off of the SAVE plan onto something else like pay. So you'd have 60-day processing forbearance, theoretically, that would count towards forgiveness. And then you would be into a general forbearance that would not count for forgiveness if it's taken them longer than that based off of the current rules, which are always changing. The thing about interest accrual is I think a lot of folks have forgotten how bad student loan interest accrual is, because it's been, you have over 3 years of the COVID pause, and then you had the SAVE plan introduced that most people were on immediately after that. So most people have really not been accruing hardly any interest, period, since like 2019. That's 6 years. And the thing about the interest accrual is at a 6 or 7% interest rate, which most federal loans are, you're talking about say you've got a $200,000 balance. Well, that's like $15K of interest a year. That's over $1,000 of interest a month, and over $30 or $40 a day of interest. And very sorry for this borrower that they're going through that. What does it make sense to try to challenge it? Well, it depends on what the person's goal is. If you're going for forgiveness anyway, I would probably choose to let this be something that you let go of and breathe out on and not get extremely frustrated with. If you're going to get forgiveness anyway, more likely than not, there will be no tax bomb on the forgiven amount. You can't promise that, of course, because it depends on what the legislation is at the time of forgiveness. But the thing is if you could reach out and complain about something, will anybody actually reply and take any action? And I think if you've applied out of the save plan into a non-save plan, they can start the interest accrual whenever they're approving you for the plan or considering to be approving you for the plan, right? So I don't really think that you have anything strong to file an appeal with. I think you just have to sort of say, ugh, well, hopefully at least you're getting forgiveness credit instead of getting zero forgiveness credit on the save plan forbearance, assuming you're not going for PSLF, assuming you're going for the long-term version. So not a fun one, but I do think that it's probably best to not let yourself be stressed and try to fight it, because I don't think they would do anything for you. So let's take another question.
Hi, I have a couple questions regarding my PSLF. I am at 120 payments. I have recertified my income. It's not updating my payment counts since November. I had 2 months of buyback, which I did apply for, and I have been waiting for a month and not heard anything besides that they received it. My payment counts have not been updated, so I'm sitting at 114 on the payment counts on studentaid.gov, but that's with my employment not being updated since November. So I have November, December, January, February, March, and 2 months of buyback. So I should be at 121 months of counted months toward PSLF. Should I just sit and wait, or should I attempt to connect with them? I am currently on ICR. Do I need to switch over? Is ICR not going to be getting PSLF? Should I switch over to a different plan? I'm just afraid that all my payments counts will not be counted if I switch over plans, and I feel like I should just wait, but I just wanted to hear what you thought. Thanks for all that you do. You've decreased my anxiety and led me in positive ways in the past, so I appreciate all you do.
The first step in PSLF buyback is making sure that you have 120 months of qualifying employment certified at studentaid.gov/PSLF. So that needs to be the first step. If you don't already have 120 months of certified employment over there, you're kind of wasting your time applying for buyback in the first place. So step one, get all that certified credit. Step two, then you can, if you're over the 120 months of certified credit, that's when you go apply for the buyback process, which is that PSLF reconsideration URL, and you submit your buyback request. And a month, I hate to say this, but a month is not that long, just with the current state of things, of them having laid off half the department. You're probably looking at more like 2-3 months to wait probably to get a response. And the buyback process can be tricky. So if you don't have that 120 months of certified employment, then you're kind of just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then you're going to hear back, oops, sorry, you don't meet the terms. ICR does count. Keep in mind, if you switch to a different repayment plan, you up to 60 days of processing forbearance also count. So 2 months potentially. So you could switch from ICR to IBR, get a couple months of processing forbearance if they take that long to process it, maybe save 2 months worth of payments. That's a little thought. Remember that PSLF credit is cumulative. It's not consecutive. So if ultimately you switch to a different plan, as long as you qualify for the plan, you have to have a partial financial hardship to get on IBR, for example. But if you qualify for the plan and you get onto it, you're good. You're not going to have your PSLF credit reset or anything. I would just say deep breath. A month is not the expected waiting time. It's more like 2 or 3 months. And as annoying as that is, at least if you have a better expectation set, then you can handle it psychologically, I think, a little bit easier. So kind of during the pandemic when everybody was having to wait a year or 2 years for refrigerators or dishwashers, nobody liked it. But at least if you knew it was going to be a year, you're like, all right, I have no other choice. I'm stuck. I've got to do this, right? So that's probably the same situation that I hear going on here. Is I would first make sure you got those 120 months of certified credit on PSLF's website, and then wait another month or two. And if nothing has happened, you might consider a constituent services complaint at that point. Let's take another question.
Hi, thank you for all you do for all of us with student loans. I've been listening to you since 2021 after I had a consultation. I've been on Pay As You Earn since March of 2021, and I've been working for a hospital not-for-profit since that time, so I've had $0 payments, and all of them have counted. My first time having to recertify income was actually this March. March 18th was the deadline of 2025. I mailed in a paper copy despite everything being shut down, even the paper copies being taken off. I did that about 4 weeks prior to my deadline. And also, advised by you and your company, I also uploaded the same paper application to Ed Financial, which is my servicer. I uploaded it to the online portal, but that was more like 2 weeks before the deadline. I haven't heard anything back. I now know that my portal says that I'm in forbearance. And I'm assuming, or I'm hoping, that's processing forbearance, although it does not explicitly say that on the website. So I'm wondering if you'd recommend just sit tight. I've heard you say that quite a few times because, I don't know if there's anything else I can do at this moment. Question 2 would be, should I also file an extension for taxes? I always do married filed separately. I still plan to do that, but being that this was my first time recertifying, my 2023 income was approximately $165,000, and my student loans in total right now are just over $120,000. So obviously, I'd rather use the $165,000-ish because if I have to, use 2024 taxes, that's around $195,000, which would be an issue. So I assume I need to file an extension, but even so, is there anything else I can do right now with this forbearance, or just sit and wait? I'm planning on, as of right now, filing an extension. Just, kind of stuck in the mud here.
I think that this is a scenario where I think that you got to be a little calm and patient on this. I think the extension's a good idea. I think that's smart. I think that in terms of the IDR recertification online, I think that would be where I would go to submit it, just to be safe. I don't think you're going to hurt yourself by submitting another online application. They actually published a statement from Department of Ed that they now really prefer online IDR recertifications. That's where people should go, according to Department of Ed, to recertify their IDR payments now that they reopen the online application. So if you've already submitted a paper one and you're still waiting, I don't think it would be a terrible idea to go online and apply again, because now the online application is back. It couldn't hurt. So I would say if this person wants to recertify, just to make sure, they could try to go online and try to submit it yet again. So kind of a difficult, obviously everybody right now is dealing with a lot of difficult stuff with student loans. That's why we have so many listener questions. So let's take another one.
Hi, Travis. Thanks for what you do. I'm curious your take on the income-driven recertification dates being pushed out. I am now on the pay plan, and my date just was pushed to January 2027. What is your take on this? Do you think there's a chance that we may need to recertify early if pay is found to be illegal? Just trying to figure out my tax season plans and appreciate your input. Thanks.
Absolutely. I think you need to be ready to have pay struck down just in case and have to immediately recertify for the IBR repayment plan. Anybody who's on pay is, generally speaking, not eligible for the new IBR plan. The new IBR plan is the same thing as pay, basically, and it's only available to borrowers who took out their first loan after July 2014. Most people on pay are looking at one of two choices: pay, which is better than IBR, 10% of income, 20 years till forgiveness, or old IBR, which is 15% of income, 25 years till forgiveness. If you are on the pay plan and you're like, well, wow, I just got extended to 2027, does that mean I can just, if I did an extension on filing separate, I can just file joint and just not worry about it because it saves me some money? Can I do that? I would recommend caution here because we still don't know what's going to happen with this court case, and it's not going to take forever, even though it kind of has already. I think it will take maybe anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple more months to get our initial ruling out. And that is well within the timeline of filing a final return by October. And so if you don't mind waiting a little bit, then I think it would be very helpful to see what that court ruling looks like. Does it preserve the pay plan? Does it only strike down save? Does it strike down all ICR-derived plans, right? It really matters what's in that court text, because if they don't strike down pay, yeah, I think that I'd probably feel comfortable filing 2024 joint, and then probably 2025, you'd want to make sure you file separate, and you'd want to wait to file your 2026 returns until you file your 25 returns, right? I don't want to sound like a broken record. Practicing patience is extremely hard for me personally. So, but I think that that's probably the best thing to do here is don't take any rash action. Just, it's okay to just sit and be and let that happen for longer than you'd like, but maybe a few months. Let's take another question.
Hey, Travis. So I got approved for IBR back in March, and they put me in the wrong IBR. They put me in old IBR. I filed complaints with CFPB and emailed a bunch of people and called and ultimately emailed the CEO of Ed Financial, and they finally admitted that they did put me in the wrong IBR and that I should be a new IBR with the lower payment. However, instead of correcting the payment, they put me in forbearance and said that they cannot process changing me from old IBR to new IBR because of the injunction blocking IDR processing. That makes no sense to me because, first of all, I was already approved for IBR. They're not going to be processing any new IDR applications. And second of all, like, they processed my initial IBR application that I submitted in November after the injunction. They accepted it and approved it on March 9th. So I just don't get it. I don't get why they can't switch me from old IBR to new IBR since the error was made on their part. I've filed new tickets and claims and again filed complaints with the CFPB and FSA, and I'm thinking about reaching out to my senator next, but I don't know what to do at this point. I'm just at a stalemate. Any advice would be really appreciated.
So here's a nomenclature thing that I probably should correct. I always talk about old IBR and new IBR. There's technically only one IBR. There's not two. There's income-based repayment, and that is it. The income-based repayment plan, IBR, has two flavors. The old version, which is you were a borrower prior to July 2014, that is 15% of income, 25 years till forgiveness, or 10 if you're PSLF. And then there is the new version of IBR, which is you have to be a new borrower as of July 2014, and you have to have, even if you take out, you can also qualify, by the way, if you've taken out new loans after that date, but you had no existing loans outstanding when you borrowed your first loan after that date. So that's also kind of an interesting loophole to be eligible for new IBR. But the weird thing that I'm wondering about is if they enrolled you in old IBR, they should have enrolled you in just flat out IBR. There's no old and new in terms of like what they enrolled you in. The issue would be a calculation error. So it sounds like they made a calculation error where they potentially calculated your payments based off of the old, rules instead of the new rules, which they should have done. That is very possible. And if that is the case, I don't know if an FSA or a CFPB complaint will actually be that successful. I think it's still probably a good first try, but I don't have very high hopes for that path. The only thing that I would recommend before reaching out to your senator's office is if you reached out multiple times to the senator's office, then there is probably some amount of risk that they would maybe be more inclined to ignore you. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf effect. And so if you do the constituent services office, what I would recommend is that you be very sure that you're correct. I do this every day. I am always amazed at how complex student loans are. And, if you believe you should be calculated based on the new IBR plan, I don't know if we maybe even did a consult for this person or not, but like you just want to be really sure you're armed with all the facts and you're positive they made the calculation error so that you can not have to be worried about what if you reach out a second or a third time because they also make a mistake. Well, they just ignore me, right? So those are just some thoughts. Let's take another one.
Hi, Travis. I was curious if you had any idea as for the likelihood of the buyback surviving, and if so, how long into the future do you think that would be? I have about 2 years before I'm eligible for PSLF forgiveness, and I work at an FQHC. Just kind of curious if you have any inclination of how that's going to go, if that's going to go, or should I just forget about that and expect to be going another 8 months on my PSLF payments?
I am referencing this statement from the Undersecretary of Education that came out. He is, of course, a political appointee of the Trump administration. He called out PSLF buyback as an option for borrowers to use. That provision came out in a 2023 PSLF rule that Biden administration did. That rule is currently not under any legal threat, but I will say that the Trump administration has announced a negotiated rulemaking committee that they will be convening and trying to rewrite the rules for ICR, pay, and PSLF. Those are the three focus areas they mentioned for this negotiated rulemaking committee. Now, obviously, if you're on any one of those strategies or plans, that's concerning. In terms of how will they rewrite those plans and strategies, I don't know. But I can say that PSLF buyback, having been introduced by the Biden administration, could either be simplified or limited or clarified that certain periods of time may not count for PSLF buyback. For example, this current save plan forbearance, they might try to explicitly exclude PSLF buyback from this era potentially. And negotiated rulemaking committees convene, and you have to publish the rule basically by November to have it take into effect the following July. So the very fastest they could turn this around would be a rule that gets published in July of 2026. I don't think it's very likely that they will be able to publish the rule in time by November. I think that would be a very rushed process. They will probably not get the rule published until, my guess is, past that November deadline. If that's the case, the rule is supposed to take into effect no sooner than July of 2027. So the big question there is, will that happen? Are they going to come out with negotiated rulemaking that impacts PSLF buyback? That is the most likely outcome for how PSLF buyback gets curtailed or removed is through this negotiated rulemaking committee, since the Biden administration created all of PSLF buyback through that same process. So if it gets undone, I think we're going to see some example text in the next few months with negotiated rulemaking committees releasing their proposals and their drafts of proposals, and we'll, of course, cover them for you. Let's hear another question.
Hello. Thank you so much for your information. You have been extremely helpful. The situation we have here is really primarily just questions about tax filing. My husband and I, we have a combined income of $169,000. Our student loan is for one person in the amount of $286,000. We are currently in the save forbearance. We are on PSLF, and we have approximately 7.5 years left, and we work for local government, so we do not anticipate that changing. So that is our plan. My understanding is that our income does allow us as a joint married to have that financial hardship. However, we do want to file married separate to take advantage of the lower income. Our income, there is very little difference. We're basically about even, maybe give or take $5,000. So it does not impact our tax situation where we'll still be in the 22%. So we're not worried about that. But our withholdings reflect our plan to have filed for 2024, married filed jointly. So we would like to roll the dice, file married jointly for 2024, and then quickly update our forms for our payroll to make sure we're withholding enough to not be penalized next year for 2025 when we will officially start filing as married separate. Does that make sense? I think we're willing to take a chance, and if the repayment begins, we believe we'll be fine as far as being eligible for PSLF, because I believe we still have the financial hardship with the combined income being $100,000 less than our debt for the loan. But understanding that our monthly payment will be really high based on both incomes, we're just not sure when the repayment is going to take place. And perhaps we're thinking that we can put in for a forbearance through the end of the year until we get to file again. Filing an extension, my understanding, doesn't really make sense for us, given that our combined income, we've been filing married joint, so our income is high regardless. So I'm not sure if I understand this circumstance correctly. And I'm just hoping that you can provide some guidance on whether this is a terrible idea or we should just eat the penalty, eat the extra taxes, and just go ahead and file married single now, because you foresee that chances are the repayment's going to kick back in and doing a forbearance perhaps isn't worth it until the end of the year. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all the support you and your team have been providing to us. Truly, truly have made this process extremely less stressful. So thank you so much.
So somebody in this situation probably has a married filing separate cost of essentially the student loan interest deduction, which is probably only like $500. That's such a small penalty. Yeah, you might have to do backdoor Roth IRAs, but like that's like such a small penalty. Like I guess if it was me, I want to get PSLF as fast as possible and be done. And so I would probably file an extension filing separately. Obviously, I'm recording this after the tax day is passed. I'm sorry there's so many questions. I just figured that y'all would forgive me. I think that if this person filed joint, I don't think it's a huge deal. I think it's okay for now, probably because of the extensions that happened on the IDR recertification. But also, I feel like that is definitely rolling the dice when you're only talking about, $500, right? $500 is like a pretty cheap cost to like hedge your bets. And, it could mean having to do forbearance for like several months while you're waiting to get your new tax return able to be filed, which, you couldn't really file it probably until like February of 2026. That'd be as fast as you could get it out the door. But yeah, definitely look at your W-4 withholding at work. Make sure you're withholding a proper amount. We see all kinds of problems with W-4 withholding with clients when they do their first filing separate season with us. Something to really think about, right? Like if it's low cost, hedge. If it's not low cost, well, maybe roll the dice a little bit more. So let's hear another question.
Hey, Travis. I have a question that is unlike a lot of the questions I hear from your listeners. I am not looking for public service loan forgiveness because I am a physician with $150,000 left of my original $300,000 in student loans. I also do not want to be required to stay at a 501c3 for 10 years as my residency was not non-for-profit. It was at a for-profit hospital. My loans currently range between 5.3% and 6% interest rate, and I've been looking into refinancing, but though people say that there's often 4% out there, I am not seeing anything less than approximately 5. I have an over 800 credit score, a long credit history because I'm actually 44 now. I started medical school much later in my late 30s, and I own a home. Could you please give me any advice or any other directions? I have looked through SoFi and continue to get loans that are just very close to my current 5.3%. Thank you.
Yay, somebody who just wants to pay off their loans and be done. This is like a fun question for me because I remember like back in the day, pre-COVID, our email list was probably kind of like a third paying off loans, a third going for forgiveness, a third going for PSLF. And, with COVID and all the 0% interest stuff, and then like there was a period in the 2021, 2022 where people were getting 2 and 3% interest rates. People were just using our website a lot and just never even talking to us, which is totally fine. Now, having everything post-COVID with the Biden administration and everything drag on for so long and be so pro-forgiveness, and now with Trump like trying to axe it seems like our email list is something like, 80, 90% people going for forgiveness these days in some capacity. So it's fun to remember, oh yeah, there's still people that just want to treat this as a debt and get rid of it. In terms of the strategy, making a high income as a physician, having a more modest amount of debt, not having your residency count, so you don't have any PSLF credit from that, not having a partial financial hardship, definitely sounds like a payoff case, right? It definitely does sound like that. Now, the only thought that I've got is, what is the structure of the person's loan? So if they have interest rates that range, if they're not consolidated loans, that means that you have choices of which ones you want to pay off first. So if you want to sign up for probably like the lowest possible payment amount that's required, something like the extended or extended graduated type of repayment plan, what I would do is I would take any excess funds over and above my required payment, which you can have a lower payment by requesting the one that's the lowest payment that is on one of those fixed plans. What that does is it frees up cash that you can go dump on your highest interest rate loan. So if that's a 6% loan, you can go and attack that one and you can pay that off. Now, let's say that SoFi or some other private lender through studentloanplanner.com/refi, let's say you apply with SoFi, Earnest, and Laurel Road or something, or Credible. Like, I wouldn't apply with every single one unless you're just an extreme rate shopper, but I would at least apply for 2 or 3. So let's say you apply for 2 or 3. Let's say that you find some deals to refinance, a portion of it, that maybe the 6% loans, cutting that to 5 is like a good deal. And so you refinance like a part of your loans, and then you dump those excess funds for having things in the extended graduated plan onto whatever the highest remaining interest rate is. Maybe that's like a 5.4 federal loan that you didn't quite feel comfortable with sending to a private lender when the private lender is only offering 5.3. And so maybe you pay off that federal loan because it's a slightly higher interest rate. And it's just, you'd rather kind of have that comfort of having at least one federal loan that's sticking around just in case, you needed to do forbearance or something, right? This is kind of a fun conversation because you can get very creative on how you pay things off. Also, one thing that people don't realize in terms of investing is there's never really a bad decision between investing and paying off loans and which one should you do first. The answer is both are fantastic compared to going and spending all the money. So if you have loans and you're paying them off, know that if you take the long road and do a 20-year fixed rate kind of thing, so you can max out your 401k and put money in brokerage accounts and things like that, perfectly reasonable. If you want to treat it like your hair's on fire and pay it off in 3 years, that's also reasonable. What counts is what your goals are. What are your dreams? What do you want to do with your life? What matters to you family-wise, goals, career-wise, etc.? That needs to drive the boat. It doesn't need to be, you got to go live like a resident for 3 years. If you don't, you're an idiot or something. A lot of the top personal finance personalities, one of the most popular ones is very popular by telling people, basically you should feel bad if you don't pay off your loans immediately. I'm not even talking about position-specific ones. I'm just talking about like the ones that are far more popular with far more listeners and downloads than me. Why does that work? Because it's emotional blackmail. It tells you, hey, you can't spend any money at all on the Disney trip because every dime you make has got to go into your loans because you're broke. The funny thing is having the same savings rate with the money going into investments, actually the math works out very similarly. The only difference is emotionally people are not willing to go put all their money in index funds instead of take the kids to Disney. But people are willing to blame this personal finance personality and make him the bad guy to say, oh, we can't do this big trip we wanted because we got to pay off our loans faster. I think there's nothing wrong with that. That's very disciplined, and that's the kind of behavior that will make you wealthy. But I just think that there's so much more to life than wealth. I think there's so much more to life than net worth. I think back to, some of the happiest moments of my life, and they're not related to my net worth really at all. They're related to my freedom, and they're related to joy and special life events, like having a child or quitting a job that I didn't feel called to, or experiencing new countries that I really had no idea about that I really loved visiting, getting to hang out with my friend traveling for a bit who was the best man at my wedding. Finances are important, and not being super stressed and strained financially is very important. So for example, when I was in my travel the world era in my 20s, I ran into people that literally had no money at all, and they were having to work in the hostel to have a place to sleep. So they were having to check people in at the hostel, fold the laundry. There was one person that worked on a farm to get food to eat, and they were still pretty happy despite, having no money. But I know they were super stressed compared to my situation, which I was quite blessed that I had worked and saved up a bunch of money from working, so I didn't have to put myself into that situation, right? So that's a super long answer. You can tell that I'm kind of passionate about people that do want to pay their loans off, and I'm also passionate about people that want forgiveness, right? Because why do I still do this after 9 years, even though it's bad for my blood pressure and it's incredibly exhausting sometimes with just the people that make the rules are just making rules that just make no sense, right? And cause chaos for no reason. Frankly, on both sides of the aisle in a lot of ways, on the student loan front at least. Why do I keep coming back for more? It's just because I love helping people realize you're an individual, you're a person, you're special, you are unique, and your strategy should solely be based off of what is good for your name, for you. And any other one-size-fits-all advice, yeah, you can have big rules of thumb and stuff like that, but it's not customized. It's not built for you. And so the person who asked, which loans should I pay off first? I would ask, about your goals. I'd want to know about your dreams. I'd want to know about the emotions that having the debt makes you feel. I'd want to know about your emotions of your interest rate, how much does it bother you? And I'd want to know about what things are more important than student loans. Maybe there's something in her family that's well, I just desperately need to get out of the debt because I saw the strain that it caused on my family and my parents' marriage, or so. I'm just making up stuff now. But that's the idea. Think about your special needs and your unique needs and make the strategy crafted around that. Wow, that was a long answer. I'm sorry, guys. I promise I'll be shorter with this next one that we're going to do.
Hi, my name is Alex. I am currently on the SAVE plan. I've been trying to get off of SAVE to get an IBR like many others. I refinanced my loans in 2020, all of my loans from way back in 97. So I am using that wonky link I found on Reddit. After I log in, it shows that I would be eligible for IBR 2014, though. and not just regular IBR. I'm at 292 payments, and it's saying that I'm over the 240 that are required for the IBR 2014. It would just seem to me that I would be in the regular IBR and would need 300 payments. So I would need 8 more once I got on IBR. Is there a difference from which one you qualify for, IBR 2014, because of the refinance in 2020? Does it not count all of the years before then? Does it assume that we're on everything's over or since 2014 if you've refinanced? Whenever I get off of Save and onto IBR, which I say whenever, hopefully that's going to happen, I just don't know whether I need to do the 8 more payments or whether I would already be eligible for forgiveness. Thanks.
When this person says refinance, what I would describe it as is consolidation, because it's still with the federal government, right? I only use the word refinance for when somebody converts it to a private lender, just to make it clear to listeners. If I say the word consolidate and they're saying the word refinance, we mean the same thing. I just say consolidate. So they're consolidated with the government during the period of like the PSLF IDR waivers, which is good. So if they're at 292 payments, they have 8 left to go. That is what they have, 8 left to go. The reason is the SAVE plan was going to do 20 years for undergrads and 25 years for grads. The repay plan did the same thing, but if all of that's illegal, then you have the IBR plan, which is just old IBR or new IBR. If it's old IBR, it's 25 years period. Undergrad, grad, it doesn't matter. So this person would need to prepare for 8 more payments, and that's how they would be able to get forgiveness. And we're talking 8 more payments. If that's the case, oh my gosh, that's like coming up really close on the deadline, because 8 more payments when I record this in April, that's like December. The tax bomb goes back into effect in early 2026. It expires literally at the end of 2025. So I really hope this borrower is able to get forgiveness before the end of 2025, because it would save them a ton of money in taxes. Now let's listen to another one.
Hi, I'm a student loan borrower with more than $250,000 in student loan debt. I'm currently on the SAVE plan and on the PSLF track. According to the Student Aid PSLF tracker, I have 9 payments left out of 120 payments. I've been on forbearance since the injunction last summer, and had I not been on that forbearance, I'd be at a full 120 payments next month in May of 2025, set for full forgiveness. I want to get my forgiveness done before December 31st, 2025, because I'm sure, as you know, paying taxes on more than $250,000 is quite a hefty price tag. What are my best options? I wish I could move to IBR to get off forbearance and have months counted towards forgiveness. I do have the money to pay for the IBR payment, and I would love to do the full buyback next month, but I'm afraid either are fraught with pitfalls. I tried to transfer off of SAVE to IBR, but the Department of Education disabled the application. I now see it's back up, but before I apply, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing and the department's application is not screwing around with me. I went all the way to the end of the application section without accepting, and I noticed that you can no longer choose the plan you want to switch into. Rather, the wording on the page about the plan was what plan you are in now. That seems shady to me, and I don't want to take unnecessary risks so close to forgiveness. What is your advice?
Keep in mind that PSLF is not subject to taxes even after 2025. So PSLF is permanently tax-free under law, so you don't have to worry about the tax bomb expiring for PSLF borrowers. It's only for people in the 20 and 25-year private sector forgiveness strategies that need to worry about that. So I do think you need to make sure you submit your studentaid.gov/PSLF employment credit, and you need to make sure that it's really up to date, and that the second you hit your May 120 months, that you immediately submit to let them know that you're at 120 months of qualifying employment. And then as soon as you see some proof that they've accepted it, then you want to go in and go apply for PSLF with PSLF buyback. So that would be the strategy to get done ASAP. And then I would also, studentaid.gov/IDR, I would apply to switch to IBR if you haven't already, and get onto that plan. And then just know that you, at worst, only have a few payments left. So that is a very good thing. I would breathe deeply. I would not get stressed about this. Just stick to the plan, stick to the strategies. This person's going to be just fine. So let's listen to another question.
Hi, my name's Kyle. Thanks for taking my question here. I'm hoping I can ask a question that'll benefit others as well. I am currently in SAVE forbearance, and I have had multiple loans over the years, and I was able to take advantage of the payment count adjustment by consolidating my loans before the payment count adjustment date. And so after I consolidated, I have basically one big loan and I have 88 counts on that entire total towards the 120 that I need for loan forgiveness. The issue that I'm running into is that when I log into student aid, it's showing that while I have 88 qualifying payments, I only have about 86 payments that are certified towards that count. And I thought this was strange because I had actually certified all of my counts prior to consolidating. So I'm wondering if that discrepancy exists because I haven't recertified my employment currently. And of course, the reason I haven't recertified my current employment, even though I am working for a nonprofit still, is because of the save forbearance issues. And I do want to point out that the IDR application is or has finally reopened, but I'm sure that'll make it on the podcast. So thanks so much for taking my question.
Anything within a few months of your employment number being off is very minor. So I would just think about how minor that is in terms of like compared to some of the really bad mistakes that we see. And I know it's important to everyone that's going through it. I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying that I would say, oh, I'm only off by like 2 or 3 months, like what I should be. I'm going to fight that battle when I have to, when I'm basically done with forgiveness, right? So you can try to fight that battle, maybe get those 2 or 3 months refunded to you. So that would be the suggestion. Feel comfortable reapplying and probably reapply however much you feel comfortable with, probably once or twice a year to watch your credit number go up over time. And just know that, you at least have light at the end of the tunnel, so which is a good thing. So let's take maybe a few more questions before we sign off today.
Hi, Travis. My name is Kaylee, and I had a question on calculating the payment count on a graduated repayment plan. I'm on the 10-year graduated repayment plan, and I have made 95 payments. However, that included 13 principal-only payments during COVID. And because of the COVID forbearance, I'm confused on how to calculate my actual payment count when it comes to my payment going up. So it is supposed to go up at payment number 96, I believe, and I'm not sure when that's going to be. So if you could help me out, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, wow. So somebody stumped me. I mean, the graduated and extended plans, the extended plans like a 25-year amortization. Graduated extended can be long. Graduated with a 10-year plan, I guess my question to the borrower is always like, why are we asking the question? So what is the purpose? What is the reasoning behind needing to know the information? Is it because they want to pay off their loans this way? If they want to pay off their loans this way, then presumably there would be a cheaper deal available with refinancing somewhere in the private market. If the goal is to minimize your payment at all possible, then I would ask, well, do you have unconsolidated loans? If you have unconsolidated loans, depending on what you're trying to do, it might make sense to consolidate them to reset the amortization on your graduated plan to get a lower payment. So a lot of people don't know that when you consolidate your loan, you reset the amortization of the different strategies you can do. That can significantly lower your monthly payment if that's what you need. So there's all kinds of options on the table. I'm not answering the listener's question about like whether or not the graduated plan should jump up at a certain time or not. I'd have to do a lot of research on that one, to be honest, about the details because the 10-year makes me think that they haven't consolidated it. And so if they have not consolidated it, then my thought would be, well, this person either really needs a low payment because they have a high income relative to their debt, but they also need a low payment, or they just want to pay off their loans. And if they want to just pay off their loans, then there's some other options that we could look at. So, example of student loans being complex. Even I sometimes have to look stuff up, even though I do this all the time. Let's take maybe a couple more.
Hey, Travis. My name is Webster, long-time listener, first-time caller. Appreciate you guys. Really love the work and the info that you guys are putting out here. I have a question about my particular situation. I am active duty military. I've been active duty since 2011. I consolidated my federal loans in October 2015. And so over the past 10 years, I've found that there's 5 random payments that were flagged as ineligible due to forbearance or deferment. Even though I'm well into my PSLF journey, it seems that under the new IDR adjustment rules, I should be able to buy back those 5 ineligible months, right? I guess if it's October 2015 that I consolidated, that means October 2025, I should be able to buy those months back and close things out. I have over 400K in loans, and my household income last year was 178. This year it'll be, or the year before it was 178. This year it'll be 248. So just kind of trying to figure out taxes right now because we've always filed jointly. Me and my spouse, we have 2 kids, but I'm just kind of concerned if I do file jointly for this cycle and I'm required to recertify in February. If the buyback doesn't come through, then would I lose the partial financial hardship status for PSLF? Wondering if you can shed light on that at all, as far as like the partial financial hardship status on a $400,000 loan. I guess I would assume that that would still be higher than my standard IDR payment, but I'm still just a little bit lost. Any light you can shed would be appreciated. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, that listener, for their service. It's obviously true that because folks serve in the military and protect us, I get to do weird student loan loopholes and talk about, ridiculous things that probably shouldn't even exist, like student loan loopholes on a podcast like this. So I do appreciate that listener for calling in and for their service. So for this person, 2015, yeah, you would be done in October 2025. My question would be, are we sure that there's not any, opportunity to buy back additional credit? Like, is there any period from potentially before 2015, maybe that you recertified or something? Maybe not. And then in 2015 to 2025, that 10-year window, I would just prioritize trying to get that employment that you were in deferment or forbearance during certified. So if you can get your employment certified during that time in the studentaid.gov/PSLF website, then you should be at least ready to have all of your employment certified to then go apply for forgiveness. Keep in mind, the military has got some unique stuff going on, like the taxability of like the housing allowance. Like sometimes I recall seeing some people's AGIs, I think it doesn't show up maybe, of certain people's housing allowances, and also just where you're domiciled can impact things like the state of residence, like whether or not you're doing community property rules, like if you're the primary breadwinner, opportunities to split spousal income 50-50 and stuff. So it gets very complicated for military families because sometimes, you'll have somebody who's like a Texas resident for income tax purposes, even though they're serving in like a base in Oklahoma or something. And then, the issue is, well, it's community property. It's all kinds of things. So for whatever reason, I think we get a lot of very complex situations like this in our tax business, which kind of makes sense. So hopefully this person, maybe if the person's spouse makes any income at all, I would definitely have filed separately for taxes and then focus on getting PSLF. When PSLF's done, then go back and amend anything that you filed separate within the past 3 years if you have any extra costs that you incurred from filing separate. So we'll do one final question.
Hi, my student loan balance increased all of a sudden from 343,000 to 407,000 over the span of 30 days. My loan servicer is Mohila. I have called them multiple times. They have long waiting hours. They don't give any answer. They say you have to talk to the federal student aid department. I call them and they said you have to talk to Mohila because it's a adjustment that Mohila has to make because they're calculating your interest wrong. I just wanted to know if anyone else has had similar issues and what should I do in this situation?
Wow. So how bizarre. I will say this, Mohila inherited a lot of the accounts from Fed Loan Servicing. They do use the same back-end processor that was built from the FIA system, the Compass system. I'm not sure if they're still using it, but I would not be shocked if they inherited a lot of stuff from FedLoan when the transfer happened. And I recall FedLoan being real special back in the day because their coders never anticipated somebody having more than 100,000 of accrued interest. So what would happen is every time somebody got to 100,000 of accrued interest, the loan, like essentially half of the loan would disappear. And so I would get these NSLDS files and they would only have like half the loan balance, but on FedLoan, then the balance is correct. And it's like, well, okay, if the NSLDS doesn't know about it, when the Department of Ed tells FedLoan to forgive the debt, FedLoan's still going to have the 200, the half of the debt that they didn't tell the NSLDS about, and that's not going to be forgiven. It's still going to be outstanding because there's no record of it in NSLDS. So that's an example of the ancestry of Mohila having a lot of data problems with their loan balances. So I'm not surprised that there would be potentially problems with it now. Some people do get confused about the principal and the interest and the accrued interest actually being part of what you owe. And some people like assume that it's not part of what they owe or something. I don't think this confusion probably exists here for this borrower. I think the borrower really is looking at like 340 and then now it's 400. What the heck happened, right? So 340 would grow probably at about 25K of interest a year. And so that shouldn't have happened that fast. So I think it's clearly some sort of mistake. Whenever you have a mistake, you just got to go talk to the relevant folks and be very patient. It's going to take a long time. And so it will get corrected. Hopefully you're not close to forgiveness yet so that you have plenty of time to get it corrected. And of course, I'm sorry this person's going through it. But yeah, I would probably, nobody wants to own these kind of situations. I'd probably start with an FSA complaint, see if that goes anywhere after a week or two. If it doesn't, probably file a CAPP complaint, see if it goes anywhere after a week or two. Then go to constituent services with your senator or a congressperson. I always recommend people use somebody who is on the education committee first and foremost. And if you don't have anybody who's on the education committee representing you, then go to whoever has the highest incentive to help you. It's probably going to be somebody in a swing district or somebody who's in a upcoming reelection battle. So those are just some thoughts as to how you engage your representative's constituent services office. So thank you for today's episode. It was a longer one. We had a lot of questions answered. I'm sure that you will have a lot of questions about negotiated rulemaking, about some of the changes in family size definitions that have happened in the past few weeks, things about the married filing separate, death, then electrification of bringing it back alive, like Frankenstein's monster or something, because married filing separate was temporarily killed off by an accidental statement from Department of Ed, but then they corrected it and said, oops, just kidding. We actually believe that it's correct, that it's in statute. So there's just all kind of chaos going on. And if you have questions you'd like to get answered, go to studentloanplanner.com/voicemail and leave a question like these listeners did. And if you want to make sure you get that personalized, customized advice that will probably almost surely, but I can't say 100% for sure, pay for itself, but it probably will. And if it does pay for itself, it pay for itself probably in multiples. Then you can get a consult at studentloanplanner.com/book. Thank you all for listening to the Student Loan Planner podcast. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Are you on the free Student Loan Planner email list? If yes, you can upgrade your experience and discover student loan loopholes so good, they might get repealed if I talk about them publicly. Find out my very best thought leadership that I really just can't be super open about anymore, unfortunately. If you want to get our very best tips, not just the ones that I can share for free, go to studentloanplanner.com/insider to get a special discount for your year membership. That's studentloanplanner.com/insider and get our very best dozens of bonus content and tips that's going to save you money and get you out of student debt faster. And if you're already an SLP insider, please reply back to those emails and let me know how I can make it even more valuable.